Hey, welcome back. Another indoor rowing session recap. I am fresh from this one. I just completed event 20.2 from this year's Road Royalty competition. I'll make sure to post a link to the Road Royalty website if you're unsure what that is. This event was very, very challenging. This was not necessarily my wheelhouse. I've always found hard sprint workouts with short rest turnovers to be very tough. I don't necessarily do that great on them. I've definitely gotten better, but mentally I just don't like them. I don't look forward to doing them. I don't enjoy them. I have a lot of anxiety around them especially when they matter like this. That being said, I had a good game plan and stuck to it, and this ended up finishing a lot better than I anticipated. There's a tendency with a workout like this to pace the longer pieces and really hammer the short stuff, and I think it's not the best way to do it. Most of the longer pieces are going to make up most of the total distance. So you have 3,000 meters you gotta complete, and the 500s and 400s need to be fast because they're almost 2/3 of it. So the smart play and the way I played it and the way I suggested our team do it is to try and row it pretty even. So I felt like I could hold 126s as an average through most of it. I kind of anticipated struggling on the final 400 and 500, which, as you'll see, wasn't really the case. So the point of the early sets was to come out pretty hard, hold 126, and then use the 200, 100, 100, 200 in the middle as a bit more of a rest. With this particular session, that pain, that sting sets in near the later part of each of the longer reps. So in that 300, the last 10 seconds tends to hurt. In the 400s, the last maybe 15 to 20 seconds. In the 500, it's that last 30. So the focus in the middle was to just stay even, not succumb to that desire to go too fast on those. So my thinking was go faster than you think on the 500, 400, 300 meter reps, and slower than you think on the 200, 100, 100, 200 reps in the middle. What that allowed the system to do is not necessarily recover, but settle in enough where when you face that back stretch, you only have 3 reps left. I kept telling myself you basically have 3 1-minute sprints to go. At that point, if you're in a good position, you can fight to hold your targets, which is what I was able to do pretty well. There's also probably a tendency in a workout like this to try and keep the stroke rate a little lower. What I find is that if you can maintain good speed at a higher rate, it tends to save the legs a little bit. Low rate efforts at high speed can be very taxing, and not necessarily from a cardiovascular standpoint, but the legs and arms tend to feel the brunt of that very quickly. So right from the start, I was trying to keep a consistently, fairly high rate around mid-30s. Just trying to let the rate do a lot of the work for me. So again, on these hundreds especially, I rode these exactly the same. I didn't try and overdo these. This was a good opportunity to rest while moving, as hard as that is. I was a little quicker on this first one. I kind of wanted to gauge how I would react to it, but starting the back half with this first 100, I consciously tried to be a little bit slower than the last one. I knew I could hold these paces very well up until at least this next 200. Right from the start, my focus was 126 until you hit the back half 300 meter piece. That rep would kind of decide the finish of the session. If I could hold 26s on that 300 without having to really hammer it, then I knew I could probably do the same thing on the 400. So getting to the 300 just coming up was the main focus in terms of maintaining pace, maintaining consistent rate, and just mentally staying in it. This is where it got pretty sticky, and I think I wrote Ollie Gray right after this and said that back half 300, 400, 500 was the key to this. I'm gonna imagine a lot of people that don't row as often as we do are gonna probably go too hard too soon and probably row those middle pieces a lot harder than they should and really suffer on the back half of this. People that know themselves well, that know how to pace, within themselves appropriately, probably had the same approach. I'm curious to see how the screens look once everyone posts their results, but a pretty even effort on this particular event makes the most sense, and maybe a little fade through the end for some people. It really depends on how fast they go early on. Getting into this 400, I still felt under control. I still felt pretty confident. So 400 meters is about a minute of work. So I just started counting strokes, just trying to focus on counting to 36. That was my goal here. We did enough 400 meter efforts last week that obviously from a time standpoint, this is a familiar domain. I think my eyes were closed through a lot of it. I'm happy I held together in terms of technique. The rate was good. You'll see the screen at the end was very consistent from rep 1 all the way to the finish. This one was less than a struggle in terms of the rep than I had thought originally. I honestly thought that the 400 and 500 would be a big struggle fest at the end of this. So for the 300 and 400, you'll notice that I allowed or basically accepted that 127 was probably going to be the smart play. I wasn't sure if pushing earlier would create more of a deficit later. So 27 was a pretty manageable split, I thought. It didn't require me to go too deep. And I was really hoping that I could finish with a good 500 if that was the case. My whole goal starting with this 5, was just to see if I could sit on 127 to start. If I could get down to the 300 meter mark and still be around 127 pace, I knew I had enough fight in me to hammer a good finish and probably finish a lot faster than the 300 or 400s before in terms of an average. Right around, say right around the 200 meter to go point, I had I wasn't necessarily scared to go, but heart rate was approaching max. So I just sort of went for it, just kind of closed my eyes and started counting and started pulling, and ended up with a faster 500 on the back end than what I had started with originally. Now some people might think, well, maybe you could have gone faster throughout. I don't think that's the case. In terms of heart rate, in terms of effort, I was riding the red line from the start. There was a definite dip through those middle reps, and then progressively got higher and higher on the back end, 300, 400, 500. So from a pacing standpoint, I don't think I could have done a better job. From a finishing average, super happy with it. I was hoping to be in the 126s. I wasn't going to be too disappointed if I was closer to 127, but to be 126 low for this one is good. Finished well. If you also completed this workout, I'd love to know your thoughts. You can add those to the comments below. There's 2 weeks left in the competition. Hopefully we'll get something a little longer next week and get away from the speed work. Anyway, thanks for watching.